I'm going to do a little workshop this afternoon on parliamentary procedure. Now, that's something that usually scares people when they hear the words parliamentary procedure. I did a 3-part video on parliamentary procedure several months ago, and in reviewing it, I discovered it was much too technical and much too boring. And so this is my second try. And I hope to make this much more simple and much more direct. I want to use situations to try to show you what motions to use. Now, parliamentary procedure is the process that's used to run meetings. Most of the people who use parliamentary procedure use some form of a book called Robert's Rules of Order. Now, Robert's Rules of Order was organized by Henry M. Robert. He was a young military captain. And because he was in the Army, when he go from town to town, people assumed that he knew how to run meetings. And one day he was called upon to run a church meeting. It petrified him because he did not know what he was doing. So he did what many of us do not do. He decided to learn how to run a meeting. And he began writing down rules to govern how he would run a meeting, how he would conduct a meeting. Being a military man, he was transferred from place to place as his ranking increased. And finally, when he got to be a general, he decided to publish his manual of parliamentary procedure, primarily because he had found that every place he went, people did things differently. And he found, quite frankly, that very often folks were being taken advantage of because they were afraid to speak, didn't want to be embarrassed, didn't know what rules to use. And other people who had a little bit more knowledge would use the little bit they had to take advantage of those who were afraid to speak and didn't know what was going on. And so he published his book, had a very long title for it, and what the publisher did, which is what publishers very often do, the publisher shortened the title of the book to Robert's Rules of Order. Now, just a little background on General Robert. His daddy was a minister. He was born in South Carolina. When he was very young, his daddy moved to Ohio because his daddy was opposed to slavery. His daddy also became the first president of Morehouse College. So that he's from a very good family in terms of wanting to do things correctly and wanting to do things in a just and fair manner. Now, Robert's Rules of Order is a generic term. Generic terms are terms that come about when a certain product comes on the market. And people get so enamored with the product that they thereafter call all similar products by the same name. For instance, Xerox was the first company to invent a paper duplicator. So now people will stand in front of a Minolta copier or an IBM copier or a Rikon copier and say, give me a Xerox copy. That makes Mr. Xerox very happy. Does not make Mr. Minolta very happy. Likewise, a company came out with the first adhesive bandage. They call it Band-Aid. Now we call all adhesive bandages Band-Aids, regardless of who makes them. Why is this important? This is important because there are many, many different books called Robert's Rules of Order, written by many, many different people, and some of them are written for specific purposes, other than for community organizations like this. So when you have an organization that's being run correctly, you need to specify exactly what volume of Robert's Rules of Order you're using. Now, the one that we use is Robert's Rules of Order, newly revised, 10th edition, Perseus Publishing. That is the book right here. I've got a covered copy right there in front of you, madam, and I'll ask you can pass it around if you want. It's about 1.5 inches thick, very excellent book. Now, I know I'm in a church, so I expect that when the meeting's over, I'll be able to find my book. And I won't have to search people's pocketbooks, right? This is an excellent manual, has all the rules specified, has examples, has even the language that you use. Now, a much simpler guide is the second book there on the chair. It's Parliamentary Procedure at a Glance by O. Garfield Jones. The nice thing about this book, and this book is very excellent for the person presiding at the meeting or others who want to keep up. The nice thing is that the pages are built in a stair-step fashion. So once you want to focus on a particular motion, you just pull that page, turn the others over, and you have all the language there, what the person should say to you, if you're presiding officer, what you say back to them, and then all the different rules that apply, whether the motion is debatable or amendable, whether it can be reconsidered. All those things are specified very, very simple manner for you. So I usually recommend the Robert's Rules of Order, 10th edition, newly revised 10th edition, Percy's Publishing, and the O. Garfield Jones Parliamentary Procedure at a glance. There are basic rules for deliberative societies, those societies that we belong to. Many of the organizations that we belong to meet on a regular basis, but sometimes we belong to a community organization that does not meet on a regular basis. Regardless of that, the basic rules are these. There should be courtesy to all. Only one item can be handled at a time. The will of the majority in European meetings or consensus in African meetings is carried out with respect to any who disagree. Now, I'm probably the only one who has this, who makes that differential. Europeans come out of a very time-sensitive background. Europe was people poor, land poor, and resource poor. They only had 3 months in which to plant their crops, only had 3 months in which to harvest their crops. It took 3 months for the crops to grow, but they had to eat for 12 months. So in Europe, things had to be done on time. And in European societies, a great stress put on being on time and getting things done at a certain time, because back in Europe 10,000 years ago, if you didn't plant on time, you would die. Black folks come out of an African background where stuff grew by itself 12 months a year. So we have a much different sense about time, and a much different sense also about inclusion. In European meetings, the stress is on getting things done quickly. That doesn't work with black people. I've chaired many, many meetings, and Brother Jones will say such and such. Brother Johnson will get up and say, just like Brother Jones just said, and say the exact same thing. In a European meeting, that's a waste of time. It's redundant. But for black folks, until Brother Johnson says out of his mouth what Brother Jones said out of his mouth, Brother Johnson does not agree. And so with black folks, when you're running a meeting, it's much more important that you try to reach consensus, to have something where everybody's included, than to get through in a hurry. Okay? The rights of absentees and individual members is respected in all cases. And this means sometimes if there's something you want to do and you have not notified those who are absent that you're going to do that, you can't do it. The voice and vote of all members is equal, and all questions deserve full and free discussion. Very simple, straightforward rules, fairness and equality for everybody.